Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting, Tuesday, February 16th. I'm trying to catch up since I missed the last meeting. I've been ill, but better. And thank you for being here. At this time, Mrs. Luton, will you please make a note that all board members are present with the exception of Annie Bush this evening. And we're going to move now I'll turn the meeting over to Ms. Bledsoe, and she has special guests for us.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick. Good evening, school board members. Tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce Gabe Harris, who is a fifth grader from Sherwood Elementary School. Gabe, if you want to come forward. He is accompanied tonight by his father, Michael, so we appreciate him being here to support Gabe. Gabe was chosen to represent Sherwood because he's such a kind, caring person. His principal, Mrs. Nicole Holt, says that Gabe demonstrates warmth, kindness, empathy, enthusiasm, helpfulness, and has a natural gift for including others. Since the first day of school, Gabe has demonstrated these traits and continues to do so both in the classroom and at the Boys and Girls Club, which is located on site at Sherwood. As an exemplary member of the Boys and Girls Club, Gabe is actively involved in a number of programs such as Junior Staff, Torch Club, and Color Wars. And Junior Staff is a career prep program that encourages leadership, responsibility, and giving back. And as a member of that group, Gabe demonstrates what it means to be a Sertoma superhero. In September, he was selected Boys and Girls Club of Springfield Sertoma Unit Member of the Month and was a candidate for Sertoma Youth of the Year. So thank you, Gabe, for being such a great example for our other students. And I ask that you all please rise as Gabe leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Right around here. Yep. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll move on to our Honoring Excellence segment, which we have postponed from the January meeting. So we're anxious and eager to recognize the collaboration and partnerships that helped make Sherwood Elementary such a great place for our students. As I mentioned, this is kind of a long-awaited celebration, and we're thankful to those who were able to rework their schedules so they could be here tonight instead of at the January 19th meeting when we had such bad weather at the last minute. The generous support of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Springfield and the Sertoma Clubs has been key to developing a community around our new Sherwood school. It's one of the many things that makes Sherwood unique, and according to the principal, that has been a great asset in the school's community and supporting both the students and the families. So we're very excited about the impact that this innovative partnership has made and look forward to a long and successful relationship in providing for the needs of students at Sherwood. I initially had planned to introduce Pat Gartland, who is the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club, but because of the rescheduling, he wasn't able to be here. So I'd like to introduce Randy Carpenter, who is the Boys and Girls Club Director of Operations, and he'll introduce to you some of our other representatives and talk about their support for our Sherwood Sertoma unit.
Thank you, Teresa. Well, one of the things that does make it unique is our kids, Gabe sets the example for the kids at the club too, and the Sherwood community is very unique. And I think we have unique communities all over Springfield, but it is a unique community that they accepted the Boys and Girls Club immediately and wanted to ensure that it was a great place for kids, and it really is. We're already almost at max capacity for our staff, so we got to, those kind of things just show that there is a need, and the Boys and Girls Club in the Springfield Public Schools is making a difference. I'd like to introduce some folks that's here with me tonight. Dean Young was our past board president, and very instrumental in making sure that all this went forward in a positive way. We have Sertoma members Conrad Griggs and Nick Burleson with us tonight, and we also have Gary Powell, who is now our current board president, just took the reins from Dean, and so he's moving us forward, keeping on moving forward, so that's always good. David McQuarrie and David O'Reilly were co-chairs of our fundraising this year to help with that and to make that happen at the Sherwood School and the Sertoma unit. So that was a big part of it, but then the biggest part was the Sertoma clubs. Sertoma clubs came together to ensure that we had enough funds to make this possible. So and these three guys are all in Sertoma. I didn't even think about that. Dean is also a Sertoma member, and so they all work very hard to make sure that the club is going well and fully supported over there. So thank you guys. We also have the architects with us tonight too. Will you guys stand up? This group here made sure that our club was included in the school theme and made sure everything went very well, and so we appreciate them too. And it was DeWitt was also our contractor, and they helped make sure that everything worked well for us and included it with the school and that whole environment. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the school board and the school system for making this possible for the kids at Sherwood School and the Sertoma unit. So thank you very much.
That's a perfect lead in to our next recognition related to Sherwood. We want to recognize the Sherwood Design and Construction Team. This group of individuals was selected by the Springfield Contractors Association as Project Team of the Year during the fall, and the award is presented annually to a group of professionals who demonstrates creativity and collaboration in developing a unique and complex project, and I think our Sherwood project certainly fits that bill. So those in attendance tonight, I'll ask that you stand as I read your name. I think there are a few people that I have on my list who aren't here. But first we'll start out with DeWitt and Associates, Michael McNamara, Kelly Troop and Ramsey Manning. SAP Design Associates, Jim Stufflebeam, Devon Swatzel and Brad McKenzie. Olson Associates, Cameron Smith and Ron Mersch. Toth and Associates, Brian Orr. Kay Evans Interiors, Chris Evans and Becky Green. And then our SPS staff, Scott Wendt, Brian Saunders, and Lori Luna. So we thank them for their creativity and collaboration to make the Sherwood project a success, and congratulate them on their award. So one more recognition tonight. We were saving these up. I'd like to recognize the Missouri Outstanding Project Lead the Way Biomedical Teacher of the Year. It's Jamie Jansen. Jamie, if you'd come forward. She's a teacher at Kickapoo, and each year the Missouri Project Lead the Way recognizes the dedication, outstanding service, and teaching of a Missouri Project Lead the Way teacher, administrator, counselor, or other staff member. And this year, Jamie was nominated and selected by her peers to be the outstanding teacher in the Project Lead the Way organization. So through her classes, our students have outstanding opportunities. I've been able to visit her classroom in the past and observe how the students conduct laboratory experiments, how they're able to use medical equipment that they would not have access to otherwise. And it gives them exposure to potential careers and practicing those techniques and using that equipment that they would be expected to use in the workplace. So in addition to that, Jamie has to complete additional professional development requirements to be able to be certified as a project Lead the Way teacher. So she takes additional responsibility and takes additional time to get that certification. So we'd like to honor her tonight. And that concludes our recognitions for this evening.
Anyone on the board have any questions or comments? Anything? Well, certainly we thank you very much for being here, and it is amazing the work that takes place with our partners, and we appreciate everything you do, and some of you I know very well, and I know how much hard work and effort you put in, and then just a minute to recognize Jamie. The work she does at Kickapoo is amazing. I know envy is not a good trait, but I have to say I'm envious when I stop by Kickapoo and I see the amazing things going on in her classroom for her students. So we appreciate all that you do, and thank you for being here. And anyone else have anything? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And sorry about the cancellation a few weeks ago. Couldn't get here. Thank you. So we'll move on to our approval of agenda, as our folks are moving on to things they have on their agenda tonight. At this time, do I have a motion to approve the Tuesday, February 16, 2016 Board of Education regular session agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Tim Rosenberry, do I have a second? Second. Jean Twitty, and at this time, please vote. Okay, we're good, thank you. We move on now to our public comments to address agenda items. At this time, the Board of Education welcomes comments from the audience about issues that are being discussed this evening. It is recommended that requests to speak be submitted prior to the beginning of the meeting, which I do have a request. Comments are limited to 5 minutes for each speaker and will be timed to help you stay on track. You'll note there'll be a timer on both screens to help you know where you are with your comments. It is inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in an open meeting. So if you have concerns about individuals, please address these concerns through the appropriate administrative supervisors, either at the school or at the district office. So at this time, we have, Mrs. Luton, am I correct, one comment on an agenda item, and ask Mr. Bill Mitchell to please come forward.
Thank you. I'm Bill Mitchell. I'm the president of the board of the Springfield Little Theater, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening. We submitted a proposal to purchase the Bailey School because the building met our entire list of needs, including its location, which is critical for expanding our education mission in the arts in the Springfield community. We are obviously disappointed that we did not have the opportunity to present a more full presentation to the board, and we wanted to let you know that we still have a strong interest in acquiring this property should the contract you are considering this evening fail to close. And we would be able to quickly gain an agreement that we think would be acceptable to the board. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our approval of minutes. And I think I occasionally read this just as a reminder to those of you that are maybe at our meeting for the first time. But at this time, the board have a policy, Board of Education Policy BDDB, that allows agendas that provide the board to utilize a consent agenda whenever appropriate. And items placed on the consent agenda that are routine in nature or among the many decisions the board has already determined are in the domain of the administration. So when consent agenda is presented to the board for action, the The board president will determine the opportunity for any member of the board to request discussion or removal of any item. You'll note we just approved our agenda, so it's set for the evening. So any item requested to be removed from the consent agenda by a board member will be placed on the regular agenda or removed from the agenda entirely. So having said all that, what we do with our consent agenda items is that we will have a motion and a second, and then we will vote to approve our consent agenda items, which includes 3.01, approval of minutes, 4.01, contracts, agreements, and change orders, and consent agenda personnel. All of those came before us for first read at our study session and are now coming to us this evening for approval. So at this time, do I have a motion that the board approves consent agenda items 3, 4, and 5?
So moved.
Thank you, Jerry Lee. A motion, a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jill Patterson. So at this time, we will vote to approve our consent agenda items. Thank you. Voting is complete. That moves us on to 6.01, Treasurer's Report. Ms. Emery, will you please join us?
Thank you, Dr. Frederick. This evening we have posted for you our routine documents with regard to information concerning the financial matters of the district, and those documents are all listed for public consumption. I would reference the items of interest report and highlight for you a few items included within the information. The budget amendment and transfer report for the period January 20 through February 12 does include some revenue reductions, and two of those are specifically referenced, the two large items. We basically have conducted a thorough review of all of the revenue and also a review again of expenditures. This is an ongoing process that is never ending, and the data is always changing. The revenue reduction presented with regard to the local tax revenue is due to an error in the certified assessed valuation data provided to us in August, this past August, at which time we set our tax levy, and that reduction is approximately $704,000. I have subsequently learned that the error occurred because of the information that was provided to the assessor's office from the Department of Motor Vehicles, and it's relative to personal property. So basically our assessed valuation was overstated by approximately $17 million, and it's attributed to the apportion plates of certain vehicles that would be part of the Greene County assessment and impacting our assessed valuation. In conversation with members of the assessor's office, we explored ways to ensure that we would receive notification as soon as something like that occurs, and we certainly will continue to collaborate and partner with members of Greene County Assessor's Office. The other change is a reduction to the state basic formula revenue, and this is, again, referencing back to the enrollment coming in lower than what was originally anticipated. So we've included that adjustment as well. We have a number of expenditure reductions totaling just over $1.3 million that basically offset that. I would highlight for you that our fund balance is stable. If you look at the ending fund balance last June, we ended at just over $39.6 million in our operating account, and we're estimating a slight increase this year at $40.425 million. So again, our fund balance is stable. If you have any other questions, I would be happy to entertain those and provide you with answers.
Any comments or questions? Again, and we've talked about this before, but Ms. Emery does a terrific job of providing us with information. It's a lot of information, but it is information that this board has asked for numerous times, and so we appreciate you bringing that forward to us. So thank you. Any?
Certainly.
Okay. So at this time, do I have a motion that the board approves the February 16 Treasurer's Report as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Twitty, or Jean Twitty, and a second by Tim Rosenberry. So at this time, we'll vote. Thank you. Voting is complete. We'll now move on to our information reports. And we have an Imagine SPS update. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce two students from Central High School that will be presenting to us this evening. This is Paul Baines, is that correct?
Yeah.
And Amanda Morrison. And welcome, and we're anxious to hear what you have to share with us this evening.
Good evening, Dr. Jungman and members of the board. My name is Amanda Morrison, and this is my colleague.
Young Ben Hackenworth. As you can see, I've been recently.
Just a little more growth there, and you got it under control.
As you can see, I've shaved quite a bit. And I've also been tanning. In more seriousness, my name's Paul Baines, and we're seniors at Central High School.
This year we'll be graduating with the class of 2016, but on behalf of the 12,000 secondary students in Springfield Public Schools, we would like to take a moment to thank you for listening to us. As being a part of the Springfield Public School system since we were 5, Paul and I have had ideas about how to shape our education, the structure of our school, and how we believe education can be more engaging, relevant, and personal. And the Imagine SPS process is giving us a voice, so we thank you.
As you will recall, a year ago, our system underwent the Imagine SPS process at the elementary level. Thanks to the work of community members, teachers, students, parents, administration, and you, the Board of Education, we have seen changes as a result. We now have a greater focus on tech integration through Ignite, summer learning through Explore, student experiences, and PBL. While the original Imagine SPS was a community conversation focused on the elementary classroom, we are now seeing impacts at all levels. The Imagine SPS secondary experience is rooted in empathy. Those who designed the experience realized that in order to understand what it is like to be a student in our own shoes in an SPS middle school or high school, the 40 participants had to experience it for themselves. This experience was not about identifying a problem, but about listening for need. As you will hear tonight, each adult participant left their schools for a week to be a part of this experience. This was a huge commitment of time and effort on their behalf, and one that we as students truly appreciate. Each adult participant became a student for 2 days. They were given a backpack, books required for their courses, a student schedule, and sent to a high school or middle school to live the life of an SPS student. They sat in class, did homework, listened to lectures, participated in class discussions, completed projects, ate school, lunch, and much more, just like us. While 2 days was a significant amount of time to dedicate to this project, to put this in perspective for you, each secondary student in our system spends an average of 1,208 days. To live the life of the SPS student, this is what we go through on a daily basis. And so this is exactly what they did in their time as students. The Imagine SPS participants experienced 0.2% of the average time we spend in secondary classrooms. But as you will hear tonight, that was enough time to initiate the need to think differently.
So the Imagine SPS process uses design thinking in order to encourage and foster change in our schools. And the design thinking process was created by the Stanford D School and is used by organizations all across the globe in order to foster creativity and change in systems, organizations, and even in schools. So as Paul mentioned, empathy is really at the heart of design thinking. As participants empathize with their customers, or in this case, as principals and teachers empathize with students, then they're able to draw more successful conclusions as to how to improve upon the system that we already have. So whenever we're starting the design thinking process, it starts with that empathy. And then after, in this situation, the principals and the teachers experience the life of a student, that 0.2%, then they were able to define the problem and look for solutions. And so after they defined what they thought could be improved in the SPS system, they began to ideate. And part of the ideation process was actually creating 3D models of prototypes that showed reflectively how they were going to solve those problems. And so the fun part about the ideation process was that it was challenging the participants to use a different part of their brain, and that they had to create these 3D models. They had to use pipe cleaners, popsicle sticks, duct tape, and other materials in order to show how they wanted to make these changes. And then after they created that prototype, then they went back to the original place where they had found that problem or that way to improve in the first place, and began to test it and show it to students and see if the designs that they had come up with really were going to be successful for improving in the SPS education. So on the first day of the Imagine SPS week, the participants experienced a design thinking boot camp where they received their schedules, backpacks, and books and went back in time to either middle or high school in the SPS system and experienced what it was like as a student. So the participants tracked their engagement levels and took notes on what made them either highly engaged or checked out. And actually each one of you tonight has a book in front of you which shows what they were able to track. It shows how they were either engaged in the classroom or what activities made them disengage. So this tracking booklet helped them to, whenever they got back together with the other participants, to remember what they had experienced and what made them check in or out. So after spending the 2 days as students, the participants returned and as a team identified 42 areas that they thought needed to be redesigned. But from there, the group then took a step back and picked 3 areas that they thought needed to be at the forefront of this process, really as the priority. And each participant chose one area that they felt fed their passion in education. The 3 priority areas that the Imagine SPS participants identified were focused on rethinking the traditional schedule to allow more choice and personalization, increasing the relevance and choice in curriculum and student experiences, and changing the physical structures of our secondary classrooms to be more collaborative and comfortable for students. But interestingly enough, most participants agreed upon that first priority being restructuring traditional schedules to allow more choice and personalization. So after choosing an area of focus, the teams began ideating and prototyping solutions. This included building those 3D models, as you see, using pipe cleaners and popsicle sticks to create those schedule changes or those classroom collaboration opportunities. And then finally, on the last day, the principals and teachers returned to their secondary schools and interviewed over 100 students in focus groups to test their ideas and to reiterate on the solutions that they had developed as a team. So now we're going to show you a quick highlight video that will be followed by Dr. Natalie Caldwell and Mrs. Mickey Kittleman, who will talk about their experiences as an Imagine SPS participant.
The world around us is changing at an exponential rate. And it's because of that rate of change, we know that it's no longer enough just to be better, we have to actually be different. Imagine SPS is a process that pulls together a group of stakeholders, both from the community and the district, to really look at what we need in our educational environment and design solutions.
We started off midday Monday, and we were here at the Community Foundation of the Ozarks, being able to kind of find out what our plan for the week was.
I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I didn't know where I was going to be going.
What we're trying to do is to be able to go into the schools, get a student's perspective of what they would like high school, what they would like secondary education to be.
Our principals and our teachers were given schedules, they were given textbooks, backpacks, and they spent 2 days living the life of an SPS student. Day 2 and day 3, we got the experience of walking in a kid's shoes, following their schedule, going to lunch, empathizing with them by being in their seats.
As a teacher, we don't really get that opportunity very often. We think we know what it looks like, but we actually don't. I went around as a 10th grader at Glendale High School, and I really saw the school day through their eyes.
It's amazing how much longer the day feels. As a student, I found myself looking at my watch, thinking, when's my next class? How much time do I have?
My back hurt, you know.
There were some engaging conversations. We collaborated a little more, but for the most part, I sat all day long, and it was nonstop. And there was no breaks. There was no decompressing. It was bam, 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 and then the day was done.
So our principals and teachers came back tired from their experience. Some of the things we heard is that the traditional schedule doesn't allow for the sort of choice and flexibility that we want to be able to provide our students. And we heard a lot about the physical learning environment. We had some principals and teachers come back a little bit sore from sitting in hard wooden desks, and they recognize we need to make a learning environment that's more student-centered.
Thursday, we came back, we kind of put our heads together, talked about our findings with group members, and then we came up with some changes that we think that might help benefit our students more. So we created a prototype, and then from that prototype, we went to focus groups today. We had some very specific questions that we had authored yesterday, and we went back to talk to the students about those questions and to bring back what we found out from them to be able now to kind of tell a story about our entire week.
I came back with this real rejuvenated passion to think of how we can do a student's day different.
All right, introducing Dr. Natalie Codwell, the principal of Glendale High School.
Thanks, Senator Paul. Good evening. I spent 2 days as a high school freshman. While my days were spent at Hillcrest High School, through discussions with participants at each of our high schools, I found that my days were a mirror image of the days that my peers experienced. I believe that our new mission statement is very powerful in guiding our work with students, so I'd like to focus my reflections on those key words in our mission statement. Engaging. The majority of my experience was passive engagement, simply complying with teacher directives. It took personal effort at times to stay passively engaged. Activities where I felt I was highly engaged were the ones where the teacher had directed a cooperative learning or group work experience. I used technology in one classroom, and while my active participation level was higher, that activity was still very much teacher-directed. The rapport my classmates and I had with the teacher had a direct impact on our willingness to engage. Relevant. I felt teachers hit this target the best. My teachers knew their content well, and I understood the why of what I was being asked to do. It may not have been relevant to my personal interest or maybe even to my personal learning needs, but I certainly understood why we were doing what we were asked to do. Personal. Lessons were content-driven. In one of my classes, student voice became important during group work where my team could pick the focus of our class project, but that was the most personalized learning experience that I had. In my best class, I noted excellent rapport between the teacher and student. Activities were changed frequently, students were asked to model for their peers, and the teacher served as a facilitator. The class that caused me the most concern, while I believe that we have high quality subs, I found that we do not use them to their highest potential. During a class with a substitute teacher, I completed a pencil paper assignment, but no instruction occurred. The assignment took no more than 20 minutes, and the rest of the time I interacted with my peers. And while that was fun and enlightening, instructionally it was a disappointment. And this has been said, but it bears saying again. At the end of day one, I had serious concerns about whether or not I would be able to complete day two. I literally did not think I would be able to physically handle sitting in the student chairs for another day. My body truly hurt at the end of that first day. One thing that became abundantly clear through this process is that we need to think differently about the educational experiences that we provide our secondary students. Our current one-size-fits-all approach shows that we're missing the mark for many students. Our follow-up discussions after the immersion experience showed there's a strong desire to change. Student voice is extremely important, and we definitely need more of that. We have a dedicated team willing to listen and to think outside of the box, and I hope that we have your support as we generate and develop ideas and bring those suggestions to you. And now, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Mickey Kittleman from Hickory Hills Middle School.
Hello, my name is Mickey Kittleman, and I am the Library Media Specialist at Hickory Hills. I had this opportunity to participate in Imagine SPS And I'm very grateful that I was chosen to do this. It was a very enlightening experience. I enjoyed collaborating with the teams prior to us going out, and just seeing the energy there. I considered myself, prior to this experience, a lifelong student. I'm a graduate student right now. However, the reality of being a student in middle school turned out to be very eye-opening and very different than what I expected. There was that first day of the awkwardness of being a new student, which was very awkward at, I'm not going to say my age. I experienced a lot of kindness. I experienced a lot of indifference. I have to say I'm not a fan of the worksheets. I understand that there are times we need them, but I was a little overwhelmed with all the worksheets. Moving from class to class ended up being a little more stressful than I expected. I think the crowded halls, it was really loud. And again, we're not going to state my age, but I'm sure that played into it. Time, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't be tardy. I was one of those kids that never wanted to go to the principal's office. So I'm thinking, I don't want a tardy slip. So that was a little stressful. Seating, we've already heard about the desks and the chairs, and I'm just going to echo that. It was really, by the end of the day, second day, it was pretty miserable. Those desks that are attached to chairs, those are awful, just gonna say. And you feel very isolated in those. The tables and chairs were better, but not always great. So not just even about being uncomfortable, but that it was just, wasn't encouraging to that working together, and just kind of kept you separated. So I didn't like that. The time of classes, I was in a school that was 90 minutes every other day for the core classes. I did not like that. I think I'm a little ADD, and that was way too much for me. And it was core classes, so I really did struggle when we heard about breaks and things like that. It was a little bit of a struggle. And every other day, I didn't like that. I wanted to go back to those classes the next day because I wanted to find out more about what was going to happen. I'd really forgotten about the stress, and I have a theme here. It's stress. Obviously, you can gather that. But I'd forgotten the stress and the rush of lunchtime. Because even as a teacher, we do a quick lunch, and often it's at our desk. But that rushing and getting in line and getting your food and finding a place to sit, that was pretty stressful. I did feel lost and out of place at times, and I wondered then how many students feel that same way. And maybe even some that are not necessarily new. So I think it probably happens more than we realize. I'm really extremely thankful for the students and staff who wanted to help me and to take care of the new students. They were awesome. After our 2 days as a student, I appreciated working with those teams when we went back to the Imagine process and what our schools and classrooms could be like. It was wonderful to get to just talk about it and really dream about what it could be. And it was really amazing to consider those possibilities. So thank you very much for that opportunity.
So, following the first phase of the Imagine SPS experience, the Imagine team continued conducting focus groups around the 3 priority areas with students and are currently meeting with community members, teachers, counselors, former SPS students, and higher education representatives. Feedback around what isn't currently working in these priority areas and possible solutions are being shared by over 150 participants. Following the conclusion of the focus groups, leaders and teachers will begin visiting other school districts who have already made shifts in these areas to begin collecting strategies for implementation. A year ago, as the Imagine SPS process for elementary learning was underway, Dr. Jungman encouraged the Imagine team, school district, and the Board of Education to be courageous, and we thank you for your courage so far to making learning engaging, relevant, and personal for all students in SPS, and we thank you for the voice the Imagine SPS experience is giving secondary students. Before questions tonight, we want to conclude with a video produced from the blog of one of our middle school principals and Imagine participant, Mr. Bill Powers. Following his 2-day immersion experience, Mr. Power shared his thoughts with Imagine participants and agreed to share them with us tonight.
We spend a lot of time designing the bridge, but not enough time thinking about the people who are crossing it. Dr. Pravat Singh. Having been in middle schools as a teacher and administrator since 2001, I thought I had a pretty good idea of what to expect. Boy, was I wrong. Yes, times have changed from the 80s when I was first a middle school student, but some things have remained the same. This isn't a new idea, shadowing a student for the day, but for approximately 38 principals and teachers in Springfield, it was the beginning of our immersion process as we imagined SPS. Here are a few things I learned. School still looks much like it did when I was a student in the late 70s and 80s, and it hasn't changed much since I became an educator back in 2001. Kids are kids no matter where they live or go to school. 50-minute classes for 7 periods a day isn't the answer. Neither is a 90-minute block. 3 minutes for passing period isn't enough time either. Students want to be active, hands-on, collaborating, creating. Students want to be heard, not talked to all day long. Batman or Superman is still a debatable topic. Reading Plus is a great tool for any level student. We have many, many, many great teachers who care about kids. The Diary of Anne Frank, still one of my favorites. School lunch is okay, but not to the point I'd eat it 5 days a week. I can still do math. I was a little rusty, but I remember y equals mx plus b and how to solve it. When do we get to reflect, debrief, communicate? Going almost 8 hours without tweeting was painful. Kids are accepting of most everyone. Thank you, Bowen, Mav, Tucker, Julie, Hope, Trinity, and Patricia for accepting me and helping me out the last 2 days. Being a student in a new school was tough, but you accepted me from the start. The bottom line is there are pockets of greatness in every school. But is it fair to the students to have their educational careers play out like the lottery? We spend a lot of time designing the bridge, but not enough time thinking about the people who are crossing it. I enjoyed my time as a learner crossing the bridge. Now it is time to rebuild it and continue to imagine SPS.
So with that, we're here to answer any questions you might have about the Imagine SPS process.
I'll take a deep breath.
I don't have any question about the process, but that then what's your next step? I mean, do we need to get more people involved in the process so they see the same things? Or can we take the number that we have now and just, which way's the way to go there?
Well, the way it's kind of playing out right now, and Interpol, I think, mentioned this, what the Imagine SPS team has been doing since that first week is we've taken those priorities to focus groups made up of stakeholders from across the community and just talked about those priorities. Are we, based on their experiences or their children's experiences, are we beginning to focus our efforts in the right direction? And we get great feedback every time we conduct those focus groups. So I think we're getting a pretty broad brush of input around those priorities. What I can say about this process versus last year's is that we never had this much student feedback. Literally, we've talked to hundreds of students about these ideas. And wooden desks are a big problem. I can tell you that for sure. But yeah, I think it's continuing to develop those priorities. And as Interpol said, the next step then is actually engaging, collaborating with some of our other districts across the country who are taking steps in these directions and see what we can learn from them and perhaps start to pilot some changes ourselves.
I was
I was trying to construct the question in my mind, and I just couldn't get it constructed, Ben. But there's a couple things I will say is that I was encouraged when Dr. Caldwell talked about that the engagement and personal piece was somewhat disappointing for you, but the relevant you heard a lot of affirmation. You had a lot of affirming events that were on the right track, and that it's really a teacher in the classroom, and that's not surprising, and it's definitely encouraging to hear that news. I guess one of my questions is, do you see radical change in our future? Do you see what are the trends? What's starting to emerge without tipping your hat, I suppose? Tipping your hand.
You know, I don't have an answer for that. I really don't know, and I don't know that our team knows that. You know, what we've said is we recognize there's need, and I think, again, it's seeing how others, and there aren't lots of them. I think we are really thinking ahead, but how others have tackled some of these same needs that they've identified. There are systems out there and schools out there that are trying these things, but there aren't lots of them. So how it works for us, how we personalize any of these sorts of changes for Springfield, I think kind of remains to be seen yet. And Dr. Jungman may have input there as well, yeah.
So that was fascinating, and I'm really happy to see so many leaders from our hierarchical staff learning what it feels like to be uncomfortable and considering those things. And I'm thrilled that you had students present. And perhaps it was just that I was so fascinated by those parts. But could you talk more about what you're doing to include the students in this? Because I know that it was a learning curve for adults to learn those things, but I think if we had spent 5 minutes with these two and a couple more like them, or any of you could drive soccer carpool for me instead, and you will hear what they're talking about. So they have a lot to offer where we wouldn't have to go, oh, because they already know. So can you talk more about what we're doing to make sure the students feel like they're part of the solution?
Well, and I might make two comments. One is, I've been a little bit surprised by sometimes the difficulty that some of our students even have thinking differently. When you've never seen or experienced anything but the way we deliver education now, sometimes it's difficult to think beyond our current structures. They will all tell you that scheduling could be better, that traditional schedule, but sometimes what better means, they don't really know. If it's late start or something like that, that's really not that radical, right? So, but that's a very small, when you think of the significance of change, that's not really radical in nature. So even students sometimes have trouble thinking differently. But the way we've engaged students, again, the last day, what we did is we took those leaders and we went back into our 15 secondary sites, and they sat with 8 to 10 students in every school and talked about their experience, talked about those needs, and asked for feedback, asked for input. So we engaged a large number of students that very week and came back to make sure we were headed the right direction. Since then, we've engaged with a number of other student groups, kind of whenever the opportunity arises. Dr. Jungman's student advisor, we've talked to those students several times. Just continue to get input at every opportunity that we can find.
And so maybe when you go to the other sites that have some things going on already, we can include them in that part too. Because that's a good point you make. They're used to what they're used to. Though I've talked to some of them who even just show up when the seating's different, like when they have the yoga balls and stuff. I mean, they are starting to think differently because they are going to classrooms where they're seeing small initiatives by really neat teachers who are already thinking that way.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we started at the elementary level last year, those students who are going through that change at the elementary level will demand something different as they move through middle school and high school. So,
I'm hearkening back. At the top of my list was scheduling that was mentioned, and having been on a previous time in the board when that was attempted.
Sure.
I only wish this kind of process had maybe taken place. It might have supported the change that I think administration tried to bring forward, and we didn't quite get it accomplished, or we were unable to convince maybe parents and teachers. But this is an opportunity to reinforce that it's not just administrators and board sitting up here thinking that this should happen. This is coming from the students. That's our focus. And so I'm really delighted to hear that, because I think scheduling must be addressed, especially 3 minutes to get somewhere and 15 minutes to eat lunch. But
We had some tardy principals.
yes.
I will tell you, we did.
And then I think the other thing that I see just as an immediate is the facilities study plan. It's just been going to be going underway, that this kind of study that can be presented to them, they've probably already seen it, heard it, but surely they've seen some things that have already been done, and they're going to bring that forward in that facility study plan. And just get the community ready to know that these are the kind of things they're going to be hearing about, and really what do they want us to look like, and what do they want for the students. So we all know that then the bottom line goes to the dollars and cents of it, so which is what we all sit around when it really push comes to shove. So just, I think this is a tremendous way to revisit some of the things that we've already tried to do. So thank you.
And I won't reiterate that, because I think it's really exciting what you're doing. Tremendous things going on. Love getting the kids involved, students, and helping to shape that environment. I guess my question is, how do you know when you've been successful? How do you know when you're there? Because we can rearrange the chairs hundreds of times. How do we know when we were successful and we did the right thing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think for us, it goes back to our end user, our customer. And that's why we start with empathy when we go through that design thinking process. So I think it's taking whatever changes we make along the way and continually asking our customers, our students and our teachers, are we headed in the right direction? Are we addressing the needs that we identified through this process? I think it's kind of a time where we live in beta. We're never finished. We're always iterating. We are, I don't know that we're ever there. And so I think it's understanding that we have to stay agile and we have to be able to shift at all times. So I don't know if we're ever going to be there, but we'll be headed in the right direction.
The indicators that come along the way, are we hitting the mission, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
engaging, relevant, personal. Those three words are at the core of what the community said, and what the kids said, and what our staff has told us they want out of their system. So those are the things we measure against. Are we hitting engaging, relevant, personal learning environments? Because we know when that happens, the other things take care of themselves. And that's when we know that we're on the right track. So I think those are the questions we're always asking our staff and our students and our parents to give us feedback on. Are we hitting those marks? Are we getting better in those areas?
Anything else? And my question is somewhat like Jill's, only I'm coming at this from a staff point of view. So we had 40 staff members take part in this. And then there was mentioned that approximately we have 12,000 secondary students. And I'm not sure what the total of secondary staff we have in place, but obviously this made a huge difference in the lives of the staff that took part in the participation. So I'm wondering, for those teachers that are teaching the way they were taught, right, and how learning worked for them years ago, and that's their comfort zone, and they continue to teach that way. And then we have those teachers that are anticipating moving into a change in their classroom. We have some that are already there, and some that were ahead of us in terms of the classroom looking somewhat different. So I guess my question is, how do we get from the spectrum of teachers that are already there, and I do know of teachers that have been doing inquiry learning and problem-based learning as just came natural to them. So we have some already there, we have some almost there, we have some getting there, and we have some that just don't want to go there. So what can we do to help those that just not sure, don't know if it's going to make a difference, and help them get there?
Well, I think what we as a team always attempt to do is meet teachers where they're at. Some are ready for something more radical than we're able to even provide them. Others need a little bit more coaching. Others just need some greater understanding to start to make the shifts. I think part of what we hope to do is build the capacity in our leaders and lead teachers. You know, each leader brought with them a teacher or a colleague that was forward thinking, and start to drive that sort of change at sort of grassroots level at the site. The good news is, because of what we did last year with Imagine SPS for elementary, most of these changes, the shifts have pushed them up into secondary. So you see Ignite and all the shifts that happen around Ignite. Explore and what we're doing with student experiences is beyond elementary. It's obviously into secondary. Project-based learning, all of those shifts are already challenging teachers and almost forcing or encouraging a sort of different way of thinking and a different way of going about education. So I think the shifts are already starting. I think from here out, it's again meeting them where they're at, growing the capacity in our leaders to help teachers grow and shift along the way.
Just the only thing that concerns me is that the excitement here and the fact that the things that people said when they were in the classrooms, and yet I hear, not you, I don't know if you do or not, I hear of communities that have, gone technology-wise, they've gotten all the technology, and then there's movements from the community and parents sometimes to go back to textbooks away from technology. And I don't know how we bring everybody along with the excitement, or where, I'm not sure how we do that. And we're a huge community, so it's not like we can have a couple meetings and say this is going, I know if students come home excited, usually that's some things that bring people along, but there must be something else out there too that says, I'm not just grabbing a hold of all these new things and the fact that you can personalize it, and we're going to sit in different types of seating, and we're going to move around more, which any of us that are involved know that all of those are good things. But there's some other movement that say, boy, we need them back in rows and textbooks in their hands that they can bring home, and more worksheets, not less worksheets, and a list of 20 spelling words per week or something.
They're shaking their heads.
And I'm just going, if that's still there, it's probably still somewhere in our community too that there's there. So I think bringing some of the teachers along we'll have far more control over those kind of things than what we're doing here. But I think there's another group out there that would say now, just what Jerry kind of mentioned, exactly why is all of this going to be better for not only my child, but the children in Springfield that are going to go out and get the jobs? Why is that really going to be better? And that, I know we got to start small and control what we can control, and that's going to be important. But I still think there will be some that are going to resist but they haven't heard from our students. They never hear from students. They still talk about they can't make change in the cash register, and I just go, oh my gosh, just go into some high school and tell me they can't make change. They're talking about things you don't even know about, and we're worried about making change at a cash register. And, I just want to know how we can kind of make sure while we're moving ahead, we're not going to leave this whole group behind, and all of a sudden they're going to put the brakes on us and say, no more money, stop all that, get them back in rows and get them in seats, because I think the board knows, this board knows that's not the answer. And I think we're ready to jump on board with where we're going. But boy, how do we get everybody on board with us, I think, is something we've got to consider. because I think that could come bite us sometime. It has other places, so as we're looking, you know, I really am excited about what we're doing here, and I understand the importance of going other places sometimes, but, you know, I really think we got enough people here. I'm not sure how many places we need to go. I'm really not sure about that. I think we've got some of the most innovative, exciting people here who can come up with what it is and let everybody else come to us sometime. That's what I think.
That's the hope. Well, thank you. I do just want to recognize one more time Interpol and Amanda for their work in helping us deliver this presentation. And then Natalie and Mickey for also taking time out of their night to help us. And then just quickly to recognize the design team from Imagine SPS. Some of these folks are here. If you are, give us a wave. The team came together and really helped to design that week out. And so I just want to recognize them as well. So thank you very much.
Well, I think when we were looking for examples of success, I think we had two in front of us. I think they told us tonight they've been with us since what, you were 5 years old? You've been in our district since you were 5 or 6, so there you go. Two examples of, I'm sure your parents have helped along the way as well, but we would like to take the credit that what a fine job you did and amazing that I think you could sit in our place today and do a wonderful job. So thank you so much for being here and your time involved. So
Thank you for allowing us to do this.
yeah, excellent. We're happy to have you. Okay, we'll move on now to our board policy adoptions revisions. Very exciting presentation. We're going to move on to something just so exciting, our board policy. The policies that are before us this evening under section 8.01, these items were brought to us, to the board for the first read at our February 2 study session. And at that time, board members had an opportunity to ask questions. And since that time, we've had an opportunity to collect additional information from administration over the last 2 weeks that assist us as we move forward with this evening with our recommendations. So the floor is, again, open for questions, comments, or discussion regarding board policies that I think we have 18 policies from board member resignation through ceremonies and observance. So at this time, anyone have anything they would like to comment or a discussion or question? Okay, hearing none, then do I have a motion that the board approves all listed policies, policy adoptions, deletions, and revisions as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. A motion by Jean Twitty and a second
Second.
by Bruce Renner. And we will vote at this time. And thank you to the board for reading through these policies. Quite massive and a lot of reading, but we have to keep these up to date, so. Okay, vote is complete. We'll move on to 8.02. This is revision of Board of Education Policy JECA. And Parker is here to answer any questions. However, just one thing I want to mention about this policy. As a reminder, this item came before the board at the December 8th combined meeting for discussion. At that time, there was a significant discussion. And then the first read of this policy was presented at the February 2nd study session for discussion. And then administration is bringing it forward with a recommendation to adopt the policy this evening. So at this time, Parker is here to answer any questions or comments or further discussion of the board before we vote on this policy. I think a lot has been said and a lot of questions have been asked. And hopefully we all are in a place where we're ready to vote on this. So but questions, discussions first. Hearing none.
Auction it.
I was not at the study session, so I didn't comment at that time. So tonight, I will just let the board know that I have had an opportunity to talk to a variety of teachers and principals regarding this policy, so that I felt confident in the way I'm planning to vote on this. And I heard from teachers have yet to step in the classroom yet, that have been hired, that this is exciting for them because they are living outside the district right now because of the a family home that they're leasing or renting and able to, and that's what they can afford right now where they are. However, that when children come along, the understanding they bring their children to whatever school they're teaching at, if it works out that way, is an absolute positive, and why they would want to teach in Springfield and stay teaching in Springfield as their children come along. I talked to a principal that indicated while it would not affect her at this point in time, her children are older, that it would have been a plus for her and that for several teachers that she that have young children coming on to school age, and what a positive impact she felt it could be for her teachers. And parents that have just indicated, sounds like a nice thing to do for employees of our district. So I have had some questions come forward, but nothing that was of a, this is a bad thing to do or a negative point of view, just questions. So that's my little comment and why I will be voting yes on this policy this evening. So at this time, do we have unless anyone wants to chime in on what I just had to say. But I think it's important that the public know that we don't make these decisions without doing a lot of our own homework and talking to the people that vote for us to serve in this role and to represent them. So, okay, so do I have a motion that the board adopt policy JECA, admission of students? Unless, I'm sorry, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't. No.
We don't listen to you anymore.
I feel like I've done a great job already. I'm just standing here.
Wow, this fella's gotten bold, hasn't he?
Well, I would make,
Yes.
since you spoke up, I would make,
I'm trying to make a motion.
I know. I'm not gonna make the motion, I'll let you make the motion. But I mean, I had a lot of questions and reservations about this from the start, and I can tell you that the staff, Parker in particular, has addressed virtually each and every one of those, or explained it to me that I didn't understand, whatever. And I do appreciate that. Just
You're welcome. Thank you for your good questions.
doing that,
We
and so,
appreciate that.
because I did have questions, but now I'm very comfortable with
I
it.
think it makes a better product at the end of the day if we're able to get more input and ask questions, which it prompts good conversation and gets good answers. So.
I think one of the things about this particular issue or item that's come before the board is it would really, to get all the answers we might like to have, would take I have a friend that says, well, you want me to drag out my crystal ball, Denise? So I think that's probably what this would take for us to really be able to have the hard and fast answers of what this is going to look like. It's going to be interesting to see, depending upon how we vote tonight, it's going to be interesting to see the turnout or what we find. But I do appreciate the administration doing a great job to get us as much information as you could on this particular item. So, okay, so I guess I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Jill Palmer, do I have a second?
I'll be Jill Patterson.
What did I say? Palmer.
Jill Palmer. She works here.
Is there something? That's old days, when I worked with Jill back in the old days. It comes forward, sorry, Patterson. Again, I've been sick, so.
You're fine. I just didn't want anything to
No
spoil.
longer on cough medicine with codeine, so I'm good.
Hey, now that was not totally clear to everyone. You said no longer. Just to be clear, it's not messing up this vote here.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jill Patterson, and so now I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you. Tim Rosenberry. So at this time, we'll vote. Okay, very good. Vote is complete. Motion carries. to new business, 9.0. There are no new business items this evening, so we're moving on to 10.0, unfinished business and sale of real estate. Bailey, Ms. Embry. I knew I was going to do that one of these days.
Good evening again. This evening represents the culmination of a great deal of time and energy that each of you has contributed, and I would like to first take a moment to remind us all of that journey. We had originally had appraisals performed on both the Bailey and the Pepperdine properties back in July and August of 2015. And that was in preparation for a recommendation to the Board of Education September 1st, 2015, per Board Policy DN, that we would declare those real estate properties as surplus. At the September 15th meeting, that action did actually occur to declare those properties as surplus. And at that same meeting, we provided to the Board of Education a request for information process for evaluating proposals. The criteria that was set forth in that included property use, plans for improvement or construction on the property, information about the respondent, the purchase price, and closing date requested, and also financing feasibility of the proposed use. October 6th, the Board of Education authorized the request for information. That was during a study session, and then we also at that time recommended that the real estate broker services would be awarded to RB Murray and Company. At the October 20 meeting, we brought back the RFI process because we needed to slightly modify it to ensure we had some standard real estate disclosure comments and also a release of liability that the property was presented as is. That property as is, and at this juncture, I'm referencing the Bailey property as a reminder, our assessment of that property indicated that it would take in excess of $2 million to bring it up to an appropriate level for use in our system. That includes air conditioning, elevator, other ADA requirements. Also, the property is landlocked and parking is limited to 41 spaces at that particular site, and unavailable then to serve us with the needs that we have in our system for our students. At the on December 17th, the RFI information deadline was December 15th. And we provided the information to the Board of Education December 17th for your individual review. We provided that information electronically. And then at our January 5 meeting, board members came prepared for that evaluation process. And 3 proposals were received for Bailey, 1 for Pepperdine, and those 4 proposals were reviewed. So during the January 5 executive session board meeting, an initial selection was made for the purpose of receiving a request for information on the Bailey property. And it was at that meeting that you directed legal counsel to negotiate a purchase agreement for the property as the initial selection. Subsequent conversations also occurred in closed session, and those were on January 26th and February 2nd, leading us up to this meeting this evening, where we are providing a recommendation that the board authorizes execution of the real estate contract for the sale of the Bailey property to Springfield Loft Apartments, LLC, operated by Jason Murray, for the amount of $300,000 and under the terms set forth in the contract. I have provided on board docs most of the specific terms relative to the length of time that the contract would take place, and in terms of a closing deadline with a 240-day general due diligence period, including 120 days for environmental analysis and then 120 days for design and permitting. There is a provision that the buyer will have the right to extend the closing date for an additional period of 45 days or until December 15th upon payment to the seller of the sum of $5,000. The buyer also has committed $3,000 for escrow toward this purchase. And if you have any questions, I would certainly be happy to answer those. perhaps I should indicate that the proposal states that the goal would be to renovate and repurpose the Bailey Elementary School building into loft apartments while maintaining the elegant and historic exterior. And I will also share that per legal counsel, we are not able to discuss the other proposals in open session until an agreement is executed with the initial proposal.
Okay, so you're ready for questions. Questions, comments, or anyone feel the need for discussion? Okay.
I just want to say that I'm grateful for Mr. Mitchell coming tonight and saying what he said about them as a proposer, that they're still interested. And thank you for coming by. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Okay, so at this time, do I have a motion that the Board of Education authorizes execution of the real estate contract of the sale of Bailey property to Springfield Loft Apartments operated by Jason Murray for the amount of $300,000 and the terms set forth in the contract?
So moved.
Thank you, Jill Patterson.
Second.
And a second by Tim Rosenberry. So at this time, we will vote. Okay, voting is complete. Thank you. Moving on to public comments to address non-agenda items. Oh, okay. So we do have two this evening. The first one that we had come forward, I will ask, once again, let me just go back and as a quick reminder, comments limited to non-agenda items, 3 minutes for each speaker, and that will be timed by the board secretary, and you will notice, those of you that are preparing to speak, there'll be a little timer on the screens to help you manage your time. It is inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in an open meeting. If you have concerns about individuals, please make sure those concerns are addressed through the appropriate administrative supervisors, either at the school or in the district office. So at this time, I invite Mr. Alan Kemper to come to the podium.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone in the school board. This says everything what I'd like to address. And I'd like to share with you that we had a meeting at the Library Center on Friday night, and we were able to share freely what we believe as Christians and as Americans is what built this nation and has made it great. I'd like to just simply say I have quotations from many of our founding fathers to back up that we need to concentrate on the greatest love story ever, and that is how that our Lord Jesus Christ died, crucified, in suffering, torture, torment, such horrible pain. And we are coming now to the Easter season. And I know there is this clause called separation of church and state, but I'd like to read to you a quotation. And this is by JECA. And JECA says this: "Nothing in the First Amendment converts our public schools into religion-free zones or requires all religious expression to be left at the schoolhouse door. Public schools may not provide religious instruction, but they may teach about religion, including the Bible or other scripture. The history of religion," you remember I was here last time and we spoke about history and truth, "and the role of religion in the history of the United States and other countries, all are permissible public school subjects. Similarly, it is permissible to consider religious influences on art, music, literature, and social studies." So this is what I would like to address. There has been wonderful creative artwork produced by Jack Chick and his associates, his team of artists. This movie that I was able to show you the poster that we had out there at Springfield Public Library, the Library Center, this was able to announce to the people that they would see 360 beautiful paintings depicting the Bible and the greatest love story ever of Jesus dying in our place so that we could have hope of heaven through repentance and faith in his name. I would just like to say, anyone that's interested, call me, 417-414-7131, 417-414-7131. My number's on the back. Did you all get one of these booklets as you came in? If you didn't, okay. Call me, and you'll see my website, well, my email. And I thank you so much, because I would like to see us do this in auditoriums in public schools and announce it as art, announce it as history, announce it as our culture, our heritage as Americans. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Okay, we have one other request, non-agenda item, and I would like to invite Mr. Aaron Brummett to the podium.
It's been kind of we've done this several months in a row now. I'm here to speak, and on the sheet it's creation science is my main topic of focus here this evening. I just want to I'm going to be kind of going off of what Alan Kemper says here for just a second, but I do want to make sure that we need to understand that we do have the freedom in our public school systems, according to the Supreme Court, to be able to speak using the Bible. I'm going to read a couple quotations here out of court cases. The first one is School District of Abington Township versus Shemp. It certainly may be said the Bible is worthy of study for its literary and historical qualities. Nothing we have said here indicates that such study of the Bible or of religion, when presented objectively as part of a secular program of education, may be affected consistently with the First Amendment. I can give you another two court cases. I won't do that tonight, but we can speak on things that are in the Bible in a secular institution. My concern is I believe that we've come to a place where we are being very biased and prejudiced in how we are teaching our students. And I'll say this, I come out of the public school system, specifically Missouri State University, and I had a number of battles there with teachers, but ultimately it came down to that every side of the story should be shown to students. My concern is with creation science is that we are not discussing that at all in any of the classrooms. And in essence, we are silencing one voice. We are saying we're only going to speak on the topic of evolution, which believes ultimately that everything came from nothing in a Big Bang 14.8 billion years ago. Now, it takes faith to believe that. Discover magazine said that we all came from nothing, nada, zilch. I've got the cover here in my notes. You have to believe that by faith. That's not scientific. Nobody's ever been able to prove that or demonstrate that. Then you have to believe that the Big Bang, from that came hydrogen, helium, and from those elements came all the other elements on the periodical table. We've never seen that in a laboratory. Nobody's ever tested that. We cannot observe that. That's not science. But yet we will teach that to our students this next week here in the Springfield school systems. So we need to seriously examine, and in the next couple of months, my hope is to come here. I'm going to give you some evidence. I think you need to consider that this institution here in Springfield is very biased to one particular agenda. And we're not giving children the freedom of discussion, the freedom of creativity to see other options. And that concludes my time. I hope that you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 12.01, report from administration and our cabinet.
Brief updates from the cabinet, and I'll turn it to Parker first.
Thanks. So, actually, I think we have a few pictures to show you tonight of a couple of different events, and one of those will be the first one I'm going to talk with you about, which is our Teach SPS event. That happened last month. The goal of that event was to acquaint and familiarize potential new teachers to Springfield Public Schools, help them to understand what sets Springfield Public Schools apart, and to help them understand why teaching in Springfield Public Schools is a great and exciting adventure that they should consider as a part of their career. We ended up with just over 170 participants, applicants for potential teaching positions in that event, and about 50 SPS administrators and teachers and other individuals there that were there to tell that story with us. It was a great event. It was, I would say, partial pep rally for Springfield schools, which is always fun, and took place in downtown Springfield, which I think added to the atmosphere. So I want to say thank you to all the people that made that happen. It was a huge collective effort, and especially to Dr. Quirk, who was the brains and the muscle behind making that come together. Also, teacher hiring is in full swing. I continue to just update you on that. There's some pictures from Teach SPS on the screen now. We did have a photo booth, so that's the story behind the large glasses there. Teacher hiring is again in full swing. We're approaching 50 new teacher hires at this point. So these are people that have already made the decision to come to work for Springfield schools, already been extended job offers, and they will teach somewhere in the district next year. We just don't know where at this point, but they are the best and brightest in the market, and we're excited to have them. And then lastly, just a note that collective bargaining season is very, very nearly upon us. We will begin that process in the coming weeks, meeting internally and establishing some priorities, and then begin the process of talking with our respective unions to gather information about their needs and come to agreement. So lots going on in the world of HR, and lots to look forward to.
A couple of updates for you. One, last month you heard a little discussion about Explore and how it's being kind of revamped and redesigned for this summer. We started registration on February 8th, and as of today we are close to 4,000 students who have already registered for Explore Summer Learning. So that's, I think that's a great tribute to Dr. Hackenworth and his team and all of the preparation that they've taken place. Of that 4,000, about 600 of them are e-learning students from our high school who are registering for online courses. So I think that's a great, showing what our customers want and we're trying to provide for them. I also saw some pictures up there I want to thank Dr. Anderson, our Care to Learn partners, and Walmart for sponsoring our Shop with a Hero event on February 6th. We had over 100 students get connected with heroes, which were teachers, principals, counselors, and they got to go shopping with that hero for health and hygiene and hunger items for their carts. We were able to affect about 100 students that day, and it was life-changing for everybody involved. So I want to thank all of those partners for allowing that opportunity. Also want to recognize on February 4th, our executive leadership team went out and we celebrated with Williams Elementary School as their focus school status has changed. And so we were able to come and partner with them and celebrate their achievements. They had to have growth over a 3-year time period, and they've removed it from that list, but we were able to celebrate with them, and we had an ice cream party, and it was a lot of fun. They started dancing. It was a lot of fun. So we want to thank them for all of their hard work. Dr. Ben has just kind of indicated to me that we have 210 Khajiit hotspots out in the field right now at our Hillcrest and some of our middle school Ignite deployment sites. We'll also be looking at some elementary deployments where we can see them being the most beneficial. So this is still in that testing and incubation time, but just on a larger scale, and we'll continue to keep you updated on their usage and where we see them being the most impactful in the system. And then lastly, I would just remind you that we have a district assessment committee that has been called together with stakeholders from all levels within the system to evaluate our current assessment plan and to looking for a better balance in what we're expecting from our students and our teachers. They will meet face-to-face on February 24th. So, thank you. Any questions?
Will limit my conversation to the work of the facility master planning process. I'm very excited to share that last week was our launch of the facility master planning process. We had members of MGT of America join us for a large group meeting that included our leadership team. So at that meeting we had approximately 100 people engaged in not only the presentation from the members of the team, but also in an activity to identify some of the areas that our principals and other leaders know should be the focus of this work. Subsequent to that, we had focus group meetings with a number of leaders and other individuals, including past board members and board members, so thank you for your time in that. We had approximately 13 focus group meetings, and we met in small groups, probably had in excess of 70 people participate in that day in hour-long sessions that covered everything from technology to safety and security, media centers, performing arts, athletics, PE, also community engagement, and certainly the PK through 5 and the grades 6 through 12 general education, and explored the needs within our system. The work moving forward, our executive leadership team will be collaborating to determine the best to approach engaging staff members, and also we will develop a strategy for engaging community members so that we can ensure that we have a multitude of feedback opportunities, and we will keep you posted as that schedule is developed. At the same time, we'll make sure that we aren't interfering with what's going on in the classroom. There will be actual assessments conducted of each building, so a team of members of the MGT of America company will come in and they'll do their calibration observations the week of March 14th, starting off during that period of time, and then immediately following that, they will be assessing each of our buildings, multiple buildings each day. So again, it's exciting. It's very important work to provide us with that roadmap we need to ensure that we're providing appropriate learning spaces for our students. And again, we'll keep you apprised. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Just do a quick check-in. Have any questions of the items that brought forward? I heard very positive feedback on the Teach SPS. Students were extremely excited, and the whole thing was like a big pep rally, and very excited to come to work for Springfield. The Shop with a Hero was amazing. You see some of the pictures and some of the tweets that went out, especially the children that were so proud of, and I noticed one little girl had sparkly beaded shoes in her cart. And for those of you that have little girls in your life, you know what an special event that is if you've never had sparkly beaded shoes before. So, and then on the facilities process, I want to say thank you to Tim and Jill. You served on the committee that selected the company that I think is going to do probably the most thorough planning that I've ever seen. I've been with the district just a few years. And their plan for getting community feedback is, it's very thorough. And so I think the rest of the board, when you have an opportunity to attend some of those, you'll see that quite a lot of information to come back to us. And hotspots, just a quick reminder of the process that we go through to select students that are eligible for hotspots. It's not just we pick a student and their family decides whether they want to continue or not. Tell us, just remind us of that process.
Sure. We have 3 ways for a student to be eligible. One, they can self-report. Hey, this is something I could really use, and there's a form they would fill out. A teacher could nominate them, or even a counselor. So we have kind of wraparound nomination process, or a student to be eligible for Khajiit. Khajiit Hotspot also has kind of a throttle on it, allowing only so much internet usage in a given period of time. So it's not going to allow them to use it for social media. It's really allowed for this internet access to get to Canvas and to do their work and to collaborate with partners. So does that sound accurate to my friends over there in the front row? Yeah. All right, thank you.
Anything else?
I would just jump to legislative, and I'm going to turn it to Jerry Lee. We were together at MSBA Legislative Summit today, and he took copious notes. So.
Make it short.
Make it short. You didn't say it, did you?
I did not. I was thinking that thing, and I did not say that.
But you were
I
thinking.
just sat
You were
here
thinking that, weren't you?
attentively.
Oh yeah.
Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, Dr. Jungman and I had the opportunity to attend the MSBA Legislative Forum today and spent the morning. Unfortunately, we have this board meeting every time this comes up. We don't have an opportunity to spend much time with legislators. today. Obviously, we'll catch up later, but it would have been nice to have been over there, but unfortunately, we didn't get to do that, so we just got to deal with the ones that showed up to part of the session. I'm not going to go into a lot of details specifically, but tons of bills out there. I know MSBA said they're tracking about 300 bills that deal with education in some fashion. Now, all of them aren't going to see the light of day necessarily, but they're out there being dealt with. And I would make an editorial comment about one of the concerns that with their new governance structure that they've set up, where committees are expected to get bills, address all bills, and they're not, committee chairmen don't have the opportunity to just say, I don't really like that one, we'll just pass over that one and not talk. They're going right down the line as they get presented. So I suspect you're going to see more bills get to the floor unless the committee chairman really have the guts enough to kill the bad bills. And the floor probably will, but you may see more of them just get there potentially. I mean, it was such a disaster last year at the end of the year. Everything's moving and picking up very fast. They're really, the lobbyists are busy right now trying to keep track of what's going on in Jeff City. Just a couple of things, a budget. As y'all recall, last year they expedited the budget so they would have the budget done prior to the session being over, so they could at least address, was there anything that the governor did? Well, they're on that same plan this year. They're planning on getting the budget out early so that they can address any issues that may come up that the governor might do with any vetoes. With respect to funding for us, the governor proposed, what, 86 million. Well, it's down to 76, or about 10 at this point from what the House has proposed. So still positive, but it's not where we would certainly like for it to be. Just a couple of the specific bills. Senator Wassom's got a bill out there that's going to put the 5% cap back on formula, which is the way it was set up originally, which is probably not a bad thing. No one's really going to get hurt. It's going to go back to where it originally was when the formula was put together. It'll fully fund the formula a lot quicker, which will then trigger some other things with respect to early childhood and things like that, which when we do get to full funding. So a lot of talk about it. I'd say I don't know if there's a good chance it'll get done, but if anybody can get it done, Jay can to do that. A couple of specific bills, a lot of discussion on school start date still, on trying to get school not to start till after Labor Day and then before Memorial Day. Mainly tourism is pushing that real hard, the lakes.
You mean they don't need them? They don't need them in the fields? Is that
cheap labor at the hotels and the restaurants? Really, the effort now is just a local decision. The community ought to decide when they want school to start. So that's what we're pushing for really hard, is let the community decide. We have a process now that if you start 10 days before Labor Day, you have a public hearing. Seems to work well. And let the community decide when they want to start and end school, instead of making it a state law that says you shall not start, I'll start this. One of the things that's kind of interesting is there's a bunch of bills dealing with civics education that is that's requiring students to pass the citizenship test, the national citizenship test. In fact, that was going to be the test instead of the U.S. Constitution and the Missouri Constitution. Well, they finally realized, well, wait a minute, that's not good. So they put it back in there with the Missouri Constitution, U.S. Constitution, and the citizenship test. So whether that will pass or not, I don't know, but there's a lot of discussion about that.
We should make them sit in the hard chairs to discuss it.
I think that's a great idea. I think so.
And Jerry, any discussion on who would pay for that additional testing?
Well, it'll be incorporated into this.
Yeah, but
Most of them are the same questions. There's a lot of redundancy between the citizenship test and the two. So it's not a compromise that we'll just put them all together. But no, we'll pay for it. I don't want to get into, David Pierce was there, who's the chairman of the Senate Education Committee. He spoke, the governor spoke. He talked about things that he was trying to get done by the end of the year. A A lot of stuff on other things, but we also heard a presentation on ESSA from NSBA, National School Board Association, the Every Student Succeed Act, that now is an implementation phase. So now, basically all the things from NCLB will go away August 1st. That kind of goes away, and now ESSA kicks in. And so it's on a 4-year reauthorization schedule as compared to 6 or 7 was the last one. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what it is. So a lot of this implementation, the states are required to get their stuff ready this fall and how they're going to comply with that. A lot of competitive grants are gone, so you don't have this competition as much, which is a good thing. But proof's in the pudding when you start writing regs and you start implementing this thing to see how it's going to work.
One quick
It's
question.
better than what we got, so it's a good thing.
Do we have approved Missouri Learning Standards now?
We do not have Missouri Learning Standards approved yet. March is the date that they're supposed to address those. And
State
they're
board met today, but that's agenda next month.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Still shooting for this next school year for those standards. So, last thing that I just mentioned, that we heard a presentation on Raise Your Hands for Kids, which is the petition on tobacco tax for early childhood. That's raising the tobacco tax 60 cents. They're in process now of getting all their signatures. I don't see any reason they won't get their signatures, so looks like it'll be on the ballot in November to provide all, I didn't write down the name. What's it called? Early Childhood Health and Education Proposal. That's the official title. And so there's a little bit of money going to health, and most of it going to early childhood that will go into a trust. It will not go into the state coffers. It'll be totally separate and protected so that the state doesn't have opportunity to pick and choose money out of that, which is a good thing. And so those will be grants given to communities for early childhood programs. I think it was $305 million over 4 years. After 4 years, about $305 million that'll generate. This will be the 4th time we've tried to pass a tobacco tax. I think it's a reasonable number. Still puts us at the bottom, close to the bottom, even with 60-cent increase. At least with the states around us for sure, which are the low-cost states. So I think if there's any chance of it passing, now's the time for it to pass. With election, new president, new governor, a lot of change, a lot of people voting. I'm not sure there's not a better time to get it passed. And every time it's come up, it's just barely lost every time. Just 49-51, 49.5, 50.5. It was just really close, just couldn't get over the hump. But I think it's going to be a really good deal. It'll all be managed by an early childhood commission that will be appointed with legislators, citizens, educators, department specific providers. So that'll be a good thing. But all in all, it was a good session today. There was a lot going on, and we'll see how the rest of the term goes. I know we've got legislative breakfast next week. No, week after next. 2 weeks in a row. So
Keep reading your Friday updates, and you'll holler if you have any questions. But Jerry nailed it. It was a lot of content, but good meeting.
And again, the board, thank you to Jerry for your additional work with MSBA. That's above and beyond your local school board duties, and we appreciate your taking that on. Your experience and expertise is very valuable, so thank you for your time you spend on that. Okay, we'll move on to 13, Board of Education discussion. At this time, any to report on any activities or events or visits that you had in the last couple of weeks?
I attended the Teach SPS event, and I thought it was great. Oh man, it was very savvy to do the enthusiasm that the 170 applicants or candidates, I guess they're all no, they're applicants, they're not candidates. There is huge enthusiasm among the group for teaching and in Springfield Public Schools. If you hear somebody say, well, nobody wants to teach in Springfield, I saw 170 people who very much would like to teach in Springfield. And I think the idea of getting out front of the hiring season helps us to hire the brightest and the best to join the brightest and the best. So I just thought that was a terrific thing, which means next year we'll see those kind of events held by districts around the area. But that's fine. And the second piece is just a quick story of something that happened in the office the other day. One of the architects who has 2 elementary age kids came to me and he said, "Hey, you're on school board." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You got one of those map things for summer school?" And I said, yeah. I was like, yeah, I just happen to have one right here. And but I didn't. But he said, "My wife's on the phone and we've got to get these kids enrolled because we want to get the first place." And they were just really excited about being part of Explore. So, or Explore. And so they're if they're any sign, we're going to have a great summer session. Very exciting. I guess I just need more map things.
Pocket guides. We'll get you more pocket guides.
That's it.
One thing, Tim, I might ask you to speak to, because Tim and I attended 2 informational boundary change meetings. You probably forgot about that.
I did.
Tuesday
Yeah.
night at Truman Elementary. The staff did an excellent job in explaining the boundary changes. Very easy to understand. I even understood the boundary changes in the bus or the transportation piece and what that would look like for these families. The turnout wasn't huge, but the parents that were there were very interested in learning more about it. Everyone seemed to be pretty comfortable with it and the explanation.
And we have identical meetings going on tonight. The very same open house meeting for those parents at Robertson and Truman. But I just want to publicly commend Jay Anderson for his speaking style to present something that could be emotionally tough for a family to know that there is the possibility that this changes, to communicate it in such a rational and empathic way to these families. And the fact that we're also giving those families choice, I think, is a very humane way of dealing with change. So kudos to the way that's working. I just hope that there's a bigger turnout.
Tim and I enjoyed that. One of the best questions came from a 9-year-old who would be changing schools, and he had a big question, and his question was, what time does this new school start? So once he got the answer to that, he was good to go.
Yep.
So it's interesting that the children kind of boil it down to what's most important to them. So I had the opportunity to talk to 3rd and 4th graders at Fremont about leadership last week, which was so much fun for me because that reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I had some interesting questions. Kids wanted to know why we serve on the board. They want to know what inspires us to be on the board, and I shared with them it was our opportunity to do something for them. They were pretty excited about that. And as I continued to have the same question, well, why do you want to do this? And why are you inspired to do this? And gave the same answer. I had a little fellow that was on the floor right in front of me, and he goes, yeah, good too, isn't it? So I agreed with him and said, yeah, it's great. And so that took us on another entirely different conversation about if I didn't make any money, how did I live? So it was quite interesting because I shared with them we do that because we care and want to give back to our community. And then they want to know how I pay my bills and how I live. So it was a great time. So, and then the last thing I do want to mention in terms of board comments, that each year the Ingram's Business Magazine establishes a list of what sets Missouri apart, 50 Missourians you should know. And these individuals recognizes people whose careers, companies, and core values are changing not just their communities, but the state, and in some cases, the world. And I want to, as a board member, mention that Dr. Jungmann was recently recognized as one of 2016's top 50 individuals in the state of Missouri. So I want to wish him congratulations. We're very proud of you for that. Okay, so anything else anyone wants to?
I do have to say something else. When I was listening to Tim talk, it occurred to me that my friends and community asked me to give the feedback. So I am someone who signed up for Explore. And so we'll start with that. My part was great because that was for middle school. I was sitting there with my finger poised at 7:29 and I was ready to go. That was a wonderful experience. I got everything we need. However, I do want to say that the people who were signing up for high school were very frustrated because that stuff was closed up at 7:31. So I would encourage you to think about what you're going to do to make that a really more reasonable opportunity for people. You shouldn't be closed out of that opportunity at 7:31. So I hope we will think of what we could do differently next year so that people feel like they have a real opportunity to get those opportunities.
I feel like mine's at a lot lower level than these other people have done. I watch a lot of basketball games and volleyball, and because grandchildren are involved, this week every night, and I'm missing one tonight, and I'm really not happy about that because there's only so many of those before they leave. But I'll be at Ozark and Kickapoo and Waynesville and in Ozark again and Ozark again, based on a tournament. And Tim joined me because I watched, was at Drury, and I thought that was a great thing. A lot of kids excited. They weren't crammed into some place. There's plenty of seats, and that was great. But I continue to be because I'm going to Waynesville Friday, and I've been there before, how our kids continue to participate at a high level because we don't even come close to the facilities that schools have around us. We don't even come close. And if this were the same in the classroom, we would be raising all kinds about it. We would be. And they're not, and yet they continue to participate and be at a high level. But I think there are some people that actually maybe look at those opportunities and say, we're not going to be in Springfield. So, and I just think that's, when I go to some of our middle schools, I am really, it really saddens me on what they have and what others out in the area have. And so I'm going to be interested in our facility plan because I think it's a big issue that we've kind of, and I say we because I've been here 22 years, that we've just not done anything with. We've just kept passing it over, and we're way behind. Oh, I will say I went to Westport, and I really am excited about seeing the different leadership that we're going to have at like the middle school there with an elementary and a middle school person in charge rather than one. I think that focus is going to help, really hope that helps drive some things there that we weren't able to accomplish before. And I think that's going to be, there's no way, what did he tell us, there were close to 900 or something out there, and we had one person with an assistant principal trying to lead that, and that just wasn't adequate. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, so anything else? Okay, we'll move on to upcoming meetings. And Jerry, you might correct me on this, but we have PTSA Founders Day banquet that Thursday this week, February 18th. And will you be attend that? Well,
I'm not sure yet.
we're all going to try to attend that, but it just depends on. We need to let Kathy. We need to let you know, or are we late in letting you know on the banquet? Okay, we could probably sneak in if we wanted to.
Sure, we can find you a chair.
Yeah, find us a chair. And then February 24, I think Mr. Dr. Dawson mentioned the assessment committee meeting, and district has allowed me to sit in on that, so I'm excited to listen. And our next study meeting is March 1st, so have that coming up. Any other meetings that I have missed to bring up?
March 2nd is PTA meeting, it'll be the candidate forum. That next Wednesday morning, March 2nd at 9:15.
Where is that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I would encourage that. For all of us to have an opportunity to hear from our candidates, what they have to say. Okay, moving on to our Plus Delta. Please take a few minutes, or a minute, whatever. And if you had some things you'd like to provide as tonight and what we could do to improve our meetings, always looking at Plus Deltas. And moving on to 15 executive session, we have a recommended action that the board meets in executive session this evening to discuss personnel and collective bargaining matters. I have a motion that the board meet in exec session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining matters as provided in section 610-021, 3, 9, and 13 RSMO. Thank you, Jean Twitty. A second?
Second.
Jerry Lee. And we'll please vote at this time.
That's supposed to be Jerry Lee. It's showing a second by Denise.
Second by Jerry Lee.
It needs to be second by Jerry.
That's okay, you can lead me up through. Anyway.
Expired too. It's probably been sitting in a hard chair.
Like they have.
Okay. Voting is complete, and at this time, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.